Hi, BookTube. Bill Rutenberg here with the Rutenberg Library, and wanted to come to you this afternoon with another book tag. And I wanted to do the Butter book tag. This was originally done by Josh over at Literary Gladiators. He's done a bunch of these tags, these food tags, and I think he's done a very nice job of being very creative with different types of foods, and he's got one on pasta, on bread, on I mean just several different tags. You need to go check him out and do some of these tags. They're fun. So anyway, I wanted to do the Butter book tag, and I'll leave the link to his video down in the description. So the first question on the first prompt on the Butter book tag is Land O' Lakes, favorite book about the American West. For me, my favorite book about the American West was done by one of my favorite authors, H.W. Brands, and it was The Age of Gold. And it's going to cover a kind of a large time frame. It's really centered around the gold rush, but it talks about a lot of different items, from the railroad to the gold rush to the formation of California. It talks about the Compromise of 1850 and the whole slave issue. It talks about a lot of stuff in this book that's really centered around the gold rush, but it encompasses everything there is about going west. And so that's probably my favorite book about the American West. Prompt number 2, Hotel Bar, a notable book you read on vacation. All right, so a few years ago, might even been about 5 years ago, I can't remember how long ago it was, we went down to Texas to see my father-in-law, and on the way, of course, when you get into Texas, that's an extremely long drive. That's like a whole day in itself if you're driving north to south. And when we got into Texas, my wife had taken over driving for a little bit, and I started reading Tom Brokaw's The Greatest Generation, and it's a book about World War II soldiers and their lives, and it really talks about why they are called the Greatest Generation with everything that they went through. I thought it was a really good book, very interesting. I still need to read the sequel to it, The Greatest Generation Speaks. I have it, I just haven't read it yet, but very good book. Number 3, Imperial, favorite book about royalty. I'm going to have to go with Antonia Fraser's Mary, Queen of Scots. I haven't read a ton of books on royalty, and so it's one of the few that I have read, and it was very, very good. It was a thick book. I was reading that book, I started reading that book right after I got done with the show Reign, which was all about Mary, Queen of Scots, and I kind of got hooked on that. It's kind of a teeny bopper show, but I kind of got hooked on that, and I kept Googling, to see what was factual in the show and what was just Hollywood. And right after that, I found this biography and bought it up and read it, and it was really good. I'd recommend it. Number 4, Country Crock, a book you would take on a camping trip. I think for me, you're out in the woods and, it's getting dark, you're by the campfire, sometimes things get spooky, and I would take Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. I think that's great. The whole movie takes, or most of the movie takes, or not movie, excuse me, most of the book takes place out on the island and off the coast of Central America. And when you get to thinking about it, if you're stuck out there and your mind gets to whirling around, that could be, it's a fun read, but could kind of get your imagination going. What if? Well, anyway, number 5, Margarine, your favorite sequel or spinoff. Okay, so I went with John Grisham's book, The Reckoning. Now, it's not necessarily a sequel, but he's done 6 different novels based in Ford County, Mississippi. And this is kind of almost like a prequel. It's one of the early stories from Ford County. And in all 6 of these novels of his, he uses basically the same characters and the same family lines. He doesn't totally change things up. So you see some of the characters have interacted from one book to the next. They've interacted with each other, and so it's kind of neat. And so I'm going to use that as my sequel, even though it's not necessarily a sequel per se, but I'm going to use it as one. Number 6, bread. Favorite literary partnership, writers or characters? I am going to go with this partnership that's been done by Brian Kilmeade and Don Yeager. They've written 4 different books together, history books. They're like popular histories, basically. So they don't like go into a ton of detail. They're made for the mass market to try to get, you know, the average person to enjoy history. And I think they've done a pretty good job with it. The books that they have written are Andrew Jackson and the Miracle at New Orleans, Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates, George Washington's Secret Six. I've read all 3 of those. I think they're really good. And then the new one that's out is Sam Houston and the Alamo Avengers, and I have not read that one yet. But I suspect it's going to be a decent book just like these. You know, they're short. They are not going to require a ton out of the reader, and it has made history very entertaining. Of course, it doesn't hurt that you've taken some of the most entertaining pieces of history to turn, you know, to make your story. But anyway, number 7, Popcorn, a book that played out like a movie. So I cheated here. I'm going to use the book Lonesome Dove, which of course they made the TV miniseries out of. So it did play out like a movie, literally. And I thought it was a really good story. It's got, you know, action, it's got, you know, your drama, it's got love story through it, and it's just a really, really good book. It's epic. In my opinion, that could go into the category of being epic. Number 8, Churn, a book that was a struggle to get through. For me, it was Theodore Roosevelt and The Rise of America to World Power by Howard Beale. This was a slow-paced book, and it took me a while to get through it. It's just a slower-paced book. I don't know how else to say it. It took me a couple months to get through this, where I'd start, stop, and it was good, just slow-paced. It was rough to get through because of the pace of the book. Probably should not. That's one of the first biographies on Roosevelt that I had read, and that probably should not have been one of my first ones. That was probably not a very bright decision on my part. Julia Child, a great French classic. I'm going to have to go with The Count of Monte Cristo. Excellent book. If you have not read that, I would highly recommend reading that. I read that about the same time that that new movie, or I say new, that was 18, 20 years ago. Anyway, the newer movie, when it came out, I read this book and I absolutely loved it. Now, I need to go back and look at the edition I read. I don't know if it was the full-scale book or not, but I loved it. And the last prompt on this book tag, the Butter Book tag, is Butterscotch, a sweet poem or short story. Now, I went with the book Different Seasons by Stephen King. This actually has 4 different novellas in it, 4 different shorter novels in it. And 3 of the 4 are definitely classics. I absolutely loved them. Shawshank Redemption, of course, they made the movie out of it. Awesome, awesome book and awesome movie. Apt Pupil, they made a movie out of that. I like the book probably more than the movie. The movie kind of weirded me out. I guess the book did too, but anyway. The third one, The Body, which they made the movie Stand By Me out of. That was excellent, excellent 80s movie, or excellent book that they made a movie out of in the 80s. And then the fourth one, I'll be honest, I can't remember what it was about, is The Breathing Method. So maybe I should just leave that one off my list since I can't even remember. But they all were in the collected works called Different Seasons, and I thought they were really good, especially Shawshank Redemption. That's probably the best out of all of them. So wanted to say thank you again to Josh for being so creative in his food tag here, the Butter Book tag. Go check out his channel and BookTube. Thank you for watching and have a great day.